So I wanted to go through the basic setup and talk about the knitting loom. So let's talk about the base itself. So I created the base. It holds the barrel. It has 2 drawers in it so that you can, put all your needles or whatever else you may need. Also on the ends, you'll notice that it has 2 holes on the base, one up, one low. We have the barrel, and we also have the stop bar. And this stop bar is actually multi-purpose, and we'll be using it in a couple different ways as we're actually going through and knitting. In order to set the piece up, what we're going to do is we're going to take the barrel. I have this set up for 36 stitches. You can print as many as you want. This setup will hold 58 with a single spacer in between each of the knitting discs. Again, you can print as many of these as you would like. You can have, 4 stitches up to 58. So basically it's all snapped together. So you can just pull off one side, load it the way that you want it, just snap it back together. The legs on the barrel actually fit directly into the base. So we just line it up with the slots on the base and drop the barrel in. Then we take the stop bar, and there are 2 slots in the back, and we just go ahead and slide the stop bar into the base, and now we don't have any movement. The other things that you're going to need in order to do this are crochet hooks and 1 double pointed needle. I use a 10. I think this is 10.5 actually, so that it'll fit. It fits down into that hole on the side. If you're right-handed, you're going to set it up with the needle on this side. If you're left-handed, you're going to set it up with the needle on this side. All right, so I am right-handed. The other thing is the crochet hooks. I have a 00 and a 6. The 00 is the one that I use the most. I know it seems strange, but it actually works well with worsted weight yarn. The 6 is what I use after I cast on to get the chain. I also use this when I'm casting off. Okay, so I will readjust so that you can kind of see what I'm doing. And then we'll go through how to cast on. Okay, so now what we're going to do now is we're going to cast on. What I want to do is I always put my yarn in a bowl, or you can go right from the skein as long as I usually set mine to the right. You can set it any way you want. I am right-handed, so what I'm going to do is set it up for my right hand. If you're going to do it left-handed, you're going to do it the opposite way that I'm doing it. All right, so I take my working yarn. Here's the end. So the trailing yarn is going behind the machine. I will lay the yarn into one of the rows. Then I will take the end, and on the end of the barrel, you'll see notches. I'm just going to wrap this around that notch. So just go ahead and pull as much yarn through as you need. Okay, make sure it's really tight when you're pulling it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to set up for our cast on. I'm going to wrap around this first one on the bottom, and the idea is you're wrapping over this yarn here. So you're going to wrap over this yarn. So I wrap around the bottom, and then I come back around the top on the same thing. So we're doing kind of like a diagonal. And what I normally do is I use my fingers and just walk up to keep the yarn from moving. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of this. And as you can see, the more practice you get, the faster it goes if you don't keep missing it. And again, don't worry about running out of yarn. Just if you need more, just pull the yarn through. The idea is you're wrapping over the yarn that's laying in the row. Again, like I said, this is only 30 stitches. You can do more or less, depending on what your pattern calls for. Okay, when we get to the end, we're going to wrap around the bottom, come around the top, and I'm going to wrap around the bottom one more time. So we're going to create that figure 8 there. All right, I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go through this top hole here. If you have to, just loosen up the yarn a little bit so you can get the yarn up through. Pull the yarn through. And now what I tend to do is just put my finger here. Just to hold the needle in place, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten up that tension on the yarn. There we go. Okay. So now I'm going to take this trailing edge yarn. I'm going to leave a little bit out, and I'm going to lay it in that next row. Okay, so we're always working one row ahead. I'm going to bring up my yarn and I'm going to wrap it around that top loop and I'm going to pull the tension on the left to tighten up that stitch. Okay. So now we're ready to begin. This is our first cast on row. So we're going to go in, pull the yarn up. Again, this yarn is pretty bad, but if it splits, just let it go. Pull it back down and start again. Drag it up over that tooth. Make sure that you're dragging it around the tooth when you pull it up. You do not want to drag it in between. This way it keeps the stitch open for the next row. So we just go ahead all the way across. And as you can see, I'm kind of like pulling the yarn through and keeping the tension on this side. As you play with it, you'll figure out what tension works best for you. I tend to kind of just let it slide and then pull back just a little bit to bring the stitch down. You want to try and keep even tension all the way across. I am going very slowly right now. This does go a lot faster once you get going. This is the hardest part about doing this. This cast on takes about 10 to 15 minutes. But once you get the cast on, it goes pretty fast. Okay. Ooh, split. Again, drop it down, bring it back up. As you can see, you can freely pull the yarn through. Okay, so what I want to do now is just kind of leave this yarn sitting out here for right now. Okay, we finished that first cast on row. This is basically like your long tail cast on. So this row right here is not 1. We're calling this 0. So the next row, this row here, if your pattern, says it has 12 rows, this is 0. This would be 1. So you always move 1 up from the cast on row. Okay, so now with the yarn sitting there, I'm going to pick up my other needle, my larger needle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to grab that first loop. As you can see, it's twisted and I want to keep it twisted. This first one is always twisted. So then I'm going to pick up the second loop and I'm just going to rotate a little bit and pull it through. I'm going to go through each one. I'm going to pull it up and pull it through. What I find is that if you kind of hold your finger up here as you're doing it, it'll keep the next row from riding up above. All right. So you're going to go in, pull through, don't split it, and just do this all the way across. Again, it takes a little practice, but it does go pretty quick once you get going. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up and get to the other side. And then I'll show you how to tie off that last row. Okay, we're down to our last 3 stitches. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these through. Okay, for this last one, as you can see, there's really no loop there. So I'm going to go ahead and release the yarn. And I'm going to bring up the loop. Don't worry about that. I'm going to pull it through. All right. You can pull that one down if you don't like that. And then just pull one more through just to close off that chain. This one's always a little tricky. And then just tighten up the yarn. All right. If you want, you can pull it all the way through and just close it up. All right. So now we're ready to begin. Because I am right-handed, I always want to work on this end of the thing. If I didn't have the double pointing needle on the side, I would have to rotate the machine back and forth in order to always work in the same direction with the tension on the left. So what I want to do is, let me show you how this works. I'm going to pull this over to the side so you can see. I'm just going to take the yarn, I'm going to wrap it around this needle, and I'm going to lay the yarn into my next row. Okay. So as you can see, if I pull on this over here, it's using this to help get it. So I can always pull from the left because I am right-handed. So now for the first row, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and push these down a little bit. Just use your needle, push them down. All right. First row, I'm going to take my needle. I'm going to stick it through and grab the yarn out of there. I'm going to pull the tension to bring it up. And I'm going to just drag this one over that first notch right there. All right. Now I'm just going to work back across. Again, this first row will be a little loose. So just bring it up. As you can see, you can work across this entire thing. If you find that these start to ride up a little bit, just push them back down. This first row is always a little looser than the rest of the rows. So again, we're just working, letting the yarn slide, and then pulling back for the tension. Bringing it up. Again, push it down if it comes up. And you will notice that as you're pulling up the yarn, it will actually tighten up a little bit the one before it. but you definitely want to make sure that you have the same tension all the way across. Okay. And then we just keep doing this back and forth. Just letting the yarn slide to your fingers, then pulling it back when you have the tension correct. If that happens, you want to make sure that you pick up the yarn and drag it back so that you can pull it back through. If you pulled it tight when it was around this piece, it's going to be harder to get it out. So again, pull it up from the middle and drop it down. There we go. Okay, this last one's going to start to ride up. Push it back down. Okay, there we go. So now this is row one. All right. So now what we want to do is I'm going to go ahead and release this back stop bar. I'm going to roll. I like to basically work with it so that it's kind of facing me. This one right here, you can't. Oh, there we go. You can't really see it that well. The next one is always kind of facing me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put the stop back in. I may have to turn the barrel a little bit in order to get it to slide in. I'm going to take my yarn. I'm going to lay it in the next. Again, this is the working yarn. The working yarn is coming from the right. My tension is always going to be in the row that I'm working on. I'm going to go ahead and release the loop off of the needle. Grab the yarn, if I can. There we go. You want to make sure that you tighten that first stitch on either edge. Just give it a little bit of looseness, and then tighten it back up. So now I'm just going to start working across. Again, using my left hand as my tension guide. What we want to do is we want to always think about having 4 or 5 rows on the machine at one time. If you release too many of these as you're going around, it will release the tension all the way up. So we want to try and keep the same tension throughout the entire piece. Again, you will want to block these pieces anyway once you're finished in order to, even out stitches or make sure everything is straight. As we all know with stockinette stitch, which this is, it will start to roll when you release it. Okay, and just keep pulling the yarn through. And make sure that when you're going into the hole that you're not going under the bar, you're going on top of it to bring the next one up. Okay, so we've just done 2 rows. I'm going to pull it back just a little bit. You don't want too much hanging out on this side. And again, we just keep working this way, back and forth. So on my next row, I'm going to be moving back this way. I'm going to be moving this way, but the yarn's going to come through on this side. So I'm going to wrap it around that needle again. All right. And now I have my tension over here. Again, bring that first one through, pull the tension, tighten it up, and then just bring it over that needle. All right. Again, I'm working this way, so I'm going to be working back. Again, reach in, grab the yarn, pull it above. I'm going to go ahead and do a few more rows. And then when I come back, I'll show you how to do some other stitches. Okay, so I've added a few more rows. What I want to do now is I want to go ahead and release that stop bar. And I want to roll the barrel back so I can get to this first couple rows. We're going to take the stop bar and I'm going to set it in 2 rows up from the cast on. The reason I put this in here is so that as I'm pulling these off, it doesn't pull off more rows than I want. So I'm basically using this as a way to keep the stitches on the discs. All right, so I'm just going to stick the end of my crochet needle in. I'm going to pull up, just push it all the way down. As you can see, it'll start to release the stitches. All right, I'm going to do this next row too. After you do the first row, you can just pull the stitches off. They'll just come right off. Okay. All right, so there's my first row. I will pull this out just a little bit so you can kind of see. As you can see, don't worry if you pull them off, just push them back down. So as you can see, I have that first knit row. All right, now I'm going to roll it around. What we're going to do now is I'm going to teach you how to do the basket weave stitch. It's pretty simple on this. It's definitely goes quickly once you get moving. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull my first stitch through. And when I'm working from right to left, it's going to be 1 regular knit stitch. So the first one will be a knit stitch. So I'm going to drag that knit stitch up. Now, what I want to do for these next stitches is I'm going to start crossing these, and I'm going to cross them as I pull them through. So I'm just going to reach in, grab the yarn. I'm going to, instead of going to the one right above it, I'm just going to move over to the one to the left. When I bring the second one up, obviously I don't want to go there. I'm going to go to that one. So I just keep bringing up, moving one, and then crossing over and hitting the other one. Again, make sure that you're still going around these when you're bringing the yarn up. Don't go through the space. Okay. Again, making sure that you keep your tension the same all the way through. You don't want to pull it too tight, otherwise you will not be able to get your needle down into the space. So we're going to work all the way across. One, then the other. There we go. Get the tension correct. And I find that for my motion, in order to get these to pull the yarn up, I kind of push the needle down, push forward a little bit, and just pull up. So I'm kind of locking that yarn onto the needle. Again, everybody has their best practices and how they work. So the more you work with it, the faster you'll get, and the better way you can find for yourself. Again, I am working slowly. It took me, I would say, about a week of kind of practicing with this, maybe an hour each day, in order to get pretty fast. I am working very slowly so that you can see how each stitch works. Again, I'm on my end. So just like on this end where I put one stitch, I'm going to put one stitch. Okay. Again, I'm working from left to right. So that means I need to wrap my yarn around my needle on the side. Go ahead and pull this one through, tighten up the tension. Okay, for this first one on this row, when I'm working from left to right, I'm going to cross that first stitch. Now, go through, pull up the yarn, and cross back. So this row will have one on each side. On this row, we'll have them all crossed. Again, go in, bring the yarn up. And just keep crossing all the way across. And the thing about working this way is that you kind of get an idea of what it looks like as you're working through it. But once you release it is when you actually really see how the stitch looks. Again, let's just split it. It's kind of hard doing it from this angle. There we go. Again, reach in, grab up. Again, working across the whole thing. Remember, you're always going over the yarn, so you'll always want to have yarn laying in the next row when you're working. If you forget to lay the yarn, which I have done, getting so excited, you just work really fast. You just pick them up and let them drop back into the hole and lay your yarn and start all over again. All right. So we keep on working this all the way across. And to our last one. Okay, so that's 2 rows. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and release a row down here. Again, getting my stop bar, putting it in the row above, and I'm going to go ahead and pull the yarn off. Sometimes you'll see that it gets a little tight. No worries, just pull up on it. It'll come right off. There we go. All right, now the other thing that you want to do is you kind of don't want the yarn to be laying so flat against the barrel itself. Just kind of pull up on it a little bit, get it to the edge. If you pop it off, just put it right back on. There we go. Okay. So as you can see, now, as you start pulling it off, you're going to see your knit stitches. All right. I'm going to go ahead and do a few more rows of the basket, and I'll go ahead and pull it off so that you can kind of see how the basket weave looks. I'll do another 2 rows of the basket weave and then do a few more rows of the knit stitch and pull this off so that you can see how it looks. And then I will go ahead and show you how to cast off. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done 4 rows of the basket weave, and then I just added 2 more rows of the regular knit stitch. And as you can see, I've pulled off the rows as I've rotated the barrel down, and you can see a really nice knit stitch. Of course, as you start to do this, it will get even for you. So if you're working with this and it it feels like it's not, just keep working with it. So what we're going to do now is I am working from right to left. I am going to, this is for our cast off. I'm going to go ahead and pull, using the larger needle, I'm going to go ahead and pull this yarn through this first stitch, if I can get it. The larger needle's a little hard with the spacing. That's why I use the smaller needle. Let me do that first. All right, I'm just going to pull this up and give it some room. Okay, now I'm going to take my larger needle. I'm going to pull that first loop through. I'm going to go into my second stitch, pull the second loop up, and I want to kind of keep it, even though that first one is going to be tight, I want to kind of keep my stitches loose, my chain loose. So I'm just going to bring it through, and I'm just going to pull it through that first stitch. I'm going to do this all the way across, again, keeping it kind of loose because I want this chain to match that chain. Again, pulling it through, come up, pull it through. And you're just kind of rolling it through that loop. Okay, if you need practice with a crochet chain, just I would definitely just make chains with the crochet hook. It kind of helps a little bit with casting on and casting off. Okay, so we're going to work all the way across. Again, just drop the stitch, not a big deal. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that one. The best part about this is if I drop a stitch, it doesn't matter because my work is still on the loom. It's not going to unravel all the way down like normal would. Again, twist, pull it through. And again, these are just two very basic stitches. I am going to do more videos on other stitches. I've kind of worked with about 6 now. 6 different ones that you can do. And I will also be showing you a video on purling. As we all know, when you work with knitting machines, they basically work as if you were knitting it around without the ability to purl. I have worked out a way that you can purl on this. It is a little more involved. I will definitely do a video on that so that you can see it. I will also show you how you can do any cable work, and also adding stitches and decreasing stitches is very simple on this. Again, pull, grab that stitch again. I was thinking about editing out these mistakes, but I think they're important that you see that that a mistake doesn't mean that you've screwed it up. Okay, we're getting to the end. So what we want to do is just go all the way to the end. Go on that last one. Then I'm going to chain one more on the end. I want one last one to close that off. And just go ahead and pull your yarn through. All right. I am going to go ahead and cut my yarn. Pull my working yarn through. Okay. Pull that a little tight. Now what I can do is I can just go ahead and pull up on all these stitches. So now you can see the pattern for the basket weave. So just go ahead and pull everything off of the loom. As you can see, because it's stocking it, it starts to roll. That won't happen when you block it. In order to get this chain to be on the outside edge, just pull up on it. So just pull the stitches down. There you go. So now, as you can see, my chain matches the chain down below. Again, as you work with this, you'll get better at your tension on your cast on and cast off. All right. So as you can see, we have rows of stockinette plus our basket weave and our cast off. Definitely work with this, play around with it. Let me know how it goes for you. If you come up with some really cool new stitch, let me know. I'd love to see it. I will be adding more videos, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments section below. I hope everybody has a great day, and Happy Knitting.